welcome back to our work. So today our guest is Tom Boehm. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you.
Tom is a local longtime entrepreneur, innovator. He is the president and CEO of Team Power Solutions, an industry leader in electrical and automation solutions, and also the president and CEO of Rayhawk Technologies, an organized focused on autonomous rail car loading solutions. Did I get that right?
You got it right, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. All right, Tom, I just thought we would just jump in and maybe start with Team Power and talk about your journey to becoming an entrepreneur.
Sure. Well, we'd have to roll back the tape a little ways, I guess. So Team Power started in 2009, and it was started as a partnership, amongst five industry friends, if you will, people that had worked together for a number of years, and after perhaps a false start in a prior company, we had an opportunity to branch out and to develop what we felt would be not only an ideal company, but something that built off of maybe some of the mistakes that we had made in the past, something that was missing in industry as a whole that wasn't common. And we put together a system and a vision of that's around succession planning, around exit strategies, and around a balance of risk and reward, and with an understanding that we're all here to share and to participate not only in the good times but also in tougher times, in the stress and in the responsibility of building and running a business.
Yeah, really a value-driven organization is what I'm hearing.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah. And what was the gap in the market that you became aware of at that time that you wanted to fill?
Well, in a prior life, prior to Team Power Solutions, we were part of another startup organization where we were in a shareholder capacity, or many of us that were in the Team Power founding group were in a shareholder capacity. And what we found was missing was really a voice and an opportunity to contribute and grow in the organization, the business. And so and that was quite common, when you look around industry as a whole, or in many businesses, it can be, I can imagine it'd be commercial and retail and all sorts of industry types. But generally speaking, it was more often than not, you'd find a single owner, perhaps a husband, wife, or family run institution, or at the very end of a very short bench of ownership in a large organization. And we really felt that added additional risk to a business, and that's a pretty bold statement, because I don't know that is absolutely true. I think it really comes down to the leadership and the management and how things are put together. But in our vision, it was about succession planning, and if one person was to own the entire organization, what does the end look like? And if you keep that in mind and you look at what other options truly exist when you have maybe a smaller piece of an organization, then the organization has the opportunity to perhaps consider other options, such as buying you out, or bringing in additional partners to take over your percentage, and so on. And our vision really was to try to build a model that could have 100-year life expectancy versus what you might expect as being a 10 to 25 or 30-year life expectancy.
What year would that have been?
It was 2009.
2009. So here in 2025, how is the business, how does it look different than when it started up in 2009?
Well, I guess a lot has changed. When we first started, as I mentioned, there was five founding partners, and that was key. It was key to every one of those partners coming to the table to join, to create a joint effort that they believed in what we were doing. And that belief still exists today. We're out of the original five. There's only three of the original five that exist today. But over those years, we have also added another 10 associate partners that are growing and developing inside the business to become full equity and full proportionate share owners in the business. So in those early days, we'll call it the first draft of the partnership agreement, if you will, and we've since revised. As you exit a partner, you learn certain things and you find the gaps in what you felt was a perfect plan. You find a gap and you aim to fix it. And we're very proud of doing that. That's so many people don't go back to the structural documents and legal arrangements of a company, and they just leave it as is. They don't want to continue improving it because it's costly. And quite frankly, it's hard. It's hard to make those decisions because you have to get everybody to agree. And that's an important note. But over that time, um, as we've grown, we've really brought our dream to life in that creating a not just a culture of teamwork, but a culture that a business that allows you to really work hard in the organization, to prove your value, to really be a team player and to be recognized for it. Now, having said that, not everyone can be an owner in a business. It's not 100% distributed owned across the entire ownership or staff of the company. It is 13 people amongst, let's say, a couple hundred or so. But it is deep enough that we have representation and balance of ownership in every division within the organization. And it's not all just people at the top. It is people staggered throughout the organization playing different roles so we can truly have a feeling of how are things going. And we don't want to lose, even if from the top to bottom approach or bottom to top approach, we don't want to lose that connection with what's truly going on in the organization, whether it be at the boardroom table or through the management of daily operations. Um, with this succession plan in mind, I mean, we're all getting older by the day. As much as we feel we can work indefinitely and we enjoy what we do, we have to be fully aware that at some point in time we're going to want to retire. We're going to want to step back, and we want to make sure that the business is in fantastic hands to carry on. And that's truly the magic of succession planning. Can you get out of a business without tearing the business down? Can you get out of the business without changing the culture of a business that the rest of the team will carry on in your place? That that is success.
Yeah, building it to be sustainable.
That's correct.
Yeah. No, and I don't think large corporations are in much different of a boat from a succession perspective, right? I think, ownership maybe doesn't necessarily change in large corporations as people in senior positions roll over, but as folks in senior positions roll over, so much expertise, knowledge, and space and is lost, right? So much leadership and history. And I don't know that it's a much easier gap to bridge from a leadership perspective, maybe just an ownership perspective.
Yeah.
So that sounds like a real internal focus in how the business has developed from 2009 till today. What about external market focus, customer segments, services? Has that evolved quite a bit, or is it still really a core offering?
No, it's when we started the business in 2009, we started in the what we would call the electrical services business, offering highly technical team of individuals that could service the heavy industry and really complement what the customer had on their side for skill sets. We would then offer skills that could complement their skills to solve problems. Some very complex, some routine, some are maintenance related, and so on. Um, in 2010, we opened up our manufacturing division in many ways as a response to the customer's request that they were looking for a fresh approach to manufacturing. We had a vast amount of what we would call field level experience. We had worked on so many different products that we had some ideas on how to do things differently. We presented some of those ideas to the market, and customers engaged. They said, "Do it, help us out. Let's get creative together and let's solve some of these problems." And we did that. The internal benefit to starting that first branch, if you will, or the diversified offering was that we gave our staff that were normally spending a lot of time on the road now an opportunity to do something at home. We really the electrical services industry as a whole over the decades has had a really maybe an unfortunate reputation of being hard on families, hard on the home front. When I think back to when I first started my career about 30 years ago, I remember a conversation I was having with a couple individuals, and they asked, "Are you married?" I said, "No." "You got a girlfriend?" I said, "Yeah, I do." And they kind of chuckled. They said, "Well, you should say goodbye to her." And I said, "Why is that?" And they said, "Well, we have the highest divorce rate in the industry."
Wow.
And I was quite a bit younger than these guys. And I stopped and I just looked at them. I said, "Why do you accept that? Why don't you change it?" And interestingly enough, they didn't have an answer. And from that day forward, I probably had about 6 months of my career. From that day forward, I burnt it into my brain that that's not going to be me. That's not going to be the way industry has to be. So many decisions, like our manufacturing arm, were built around the fact that how do we have something different to offer our staff to allow the accommodation of family, the flexibility of schedule, give some lateral movement if as we grow, so people can move around throughout the organization, and become a little bit more family centric as a business versus just honestly just being really hard on people and their families. So that kind of gives you a little bit of groundwork for our manufacturing side. Shortly thereafter, later in 2010 and into 2011, we started our automation and instrumentation side. And in mixed in between that, our engineering group was born predominantly to start supporting our manufacturing, but then as time went on later to support our customers as far as a consulting service. So where we are today, we actually have five different divisions. We have our electrical and instrumentation as it's considered one group. We have our engineering, we have our manufacturing, we have our automation, which is a little different twist than on the instrumentation piece, is more of a programming and automation piece for balance of plant. And then we have our training division. So we've diversified quite a bit. All these departments really feed one another as well. So we've created an ecosystem of growth, even internally on its own. But we've also created a very well-rounded support system for our customers. That really, we are a one-stop shop.
Very interesting. Yeah, one stop shop. And you're talking about customers, a variety of different industries. I know you're working throughout the U.S. as well. Variety, geography, industries. Can you tell us a little bit about what your customer looks like?
For sure. But the nature of what we do, being sought as or seen as a very, call it a solution house of technical resources. Naturally, our best fit is in heavier or more complex industries. It's not to say that we don't work for specific, institutional, commercial type of clients. We do have some of those valuable clients as well. But more often than not, you're going to see probably 90 to 95% of our revenue in heavy industry. So industries like mining, uh, pulp and paper, oil and gas, utilities and generation, and so on.
Right. No, makes sense. And so we're talking some of the evolution of the business, both internally focused and the market focused as well. And you may not have an answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Was there any big, like, you talk about gaps in the partner agreements that can be closed in the next iteration of. So that's just continuous improvement. But there was any big gaps or big failures from 2009 till now that stand out from a learning lesson perspective for you?
Boy, you know what? I would just say, yeah, lots. I We make mistakes, just like everybody else,
Yeah.
and quite frankly, it's not that I would ever say that someone should get out of bed in the morning to make mistakes, but in reality, I don't think if you're not making mistakes, you're not growing.
Absolutely.
The difference there is do you realize that you're making mistakes, and
Yeah.
sometimes we realize too late. So I guess if I was to look back at any kind of substantial things that happened. One that comes to mind, and this was a difficult one to even present to our staff, was what happened to our business in 2013 and 2014. And to give a little bit of a recollection to where the market was at, if you remember the period between 2003 and 2013, Saskatchewan was riding an all-time high on the capital expenditures, and particularly in the mining. And it was a mixture. By dollar amount, there was more being spent in potash than there was in uranium. But in fact, both industries were growing and were expanding and investing. And it was good times. Even if you were to look at the big economic crisis of 2008, Saskatchewan sailed through that almost unscathed. So we were a very unique economy as in comparison to what was going on in the rest of the world or North America for sure. But in 2013, we were at the tail end of a significant investment in mining in Saskatchewan. And over the prior 10 years, so many companies shifted their attention to working at home. There were people staying in their own beds at night and really enjoying that economic boom that we were having locally. Unfortunately, we did see that coming. We did see the end of that economic boom coming in, and we had moved things around inside our business to really reestablish our position in oil and gas and reestablish some of the other markets that we maybe weren't paying attention to as closely as we should have been over the prior 10 years. But unfortunately, things didn't get as much traction as we had hoped. And what we found is that as 2013 ended and we went into 2014, we saw a significant curtailment in our revenue. Ultimately, it impacted not only our bottom line, but it impacted our staff count. It had ripple effects that it consumed some retained earnings that were there and put aside to support long-term growth. And it really created a perfect storm. And, that was really tough. Did we see it coming? For sure. Did we attempt to make the right decisions to strengthen and solidify and stabilize the business to ride through that and continue to grow? We thought we did at the time. And it's not that we didn't invest, it's not that we didn't think about it, it's not that we didn't think strategically about it. But the traction didn't happen. And therefore, ultimately, to this day, I struggled to talk about that. And even insofar as a little bit of self-awareness, I even actually went and got professional coaching on how to have this conversation with our staff.
Good for you to have the insight.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. Often as leaders of organizations, insight is expected. It's expected. I would never say it's not respected or appreciated, but it is expected. And when insight does not materialize in impactful decisions that propel in the right direction, when it goes the wrong way, there's I don't know that there's entirely a level of understanding that people can have, because they put so much trust into you to make it right the first time. Mm-hmm. That it's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah.
So I'm sure, well, I know just from talking with colleagues in the industries, I know we were not the only company to feel that kind of pain. But you know what? It's times like that as a testament to what we've built, that when times get tough, the tough get going. And the team pulled together, we rebuilt, and that mistake has never happened again.
Yeah. And how have you mitigated that risk in the future?
Well, first of all, by always, having that foresight, looking as far ahead as possible, and trying to read the crystal ball. And I'll say one disclaimer that sometimes I feel like my crystal ball is a bowling ball that's black with holes in it. So I really wonder sometimes. But
did you not see Trump and the 25% tariff coming? Come on.
Well, I think we all heard it was coming, but I don't know if we all believed it at times. But or that it'll last. But we'll see what happens there. But ultimately, the way you change is that you sharpen your pencil, you sharpen your perspective, you learn from your past mistakes, if you will. You put better checks and balances in place, and you really focus on what would have truly prevented that from happening in the first place. And as much as I love and appreciate all the business in mining, and in particular in that time, we've loved being closer to home for sure. But when you're competing in a global scale, you have to make sure you protect your people first. You can't put further risk in front of your company just because it's comfortable. You have a responsibility to be the person looking as far out as possible and steering that ship accordingly, because especially with organizations that are larger size, they do not turn on a dime.
No,
and you will hit the reef if you don't see it coming from a long ways out.
It's also hard to manage a growing organization, a company that's diversifying and growing and expanding their service offering. And there's so much momentum that comes with that growth. And then to simultaneously be preparing for when that changes, that is a very difficult thing to balance. But yeah, I mean, the other thing I just wanted to say is amazing job on culture and leadership. Like that's a big theme in my podcast. We do spend a lot of time talking about leadership. I'm going to say that you and the organizations that you lead have a leg up against maybe 95% of companies out there, because 95% of companies out there still have not figured out that their teams want to have a voice or allow employees to have a voice that is heard and then change is implemented, right? Those are two very different things. So I think just your ability to attract and retain people is going to be, I'm imagining your retention rates are really good based on that information. And I'd imagine they're just going to keep getting better.
Well, thank you.
So one thing, it's right in my title that I hold at work, but I find many senior leaders, I'm going to include you and I in this category, are generalists by trade, right? You're looking at a financial statement in the morning, you're sitting at a board meeting in the afternoon, and you're at a sales pitch that evening, right? There's just so many different parts of what comes into running a successful business. What role, what's your magic lane? Is it sales? Is it business development? Is it innovation, product development? Like what is your specialty amongst all the hats that you wear?
Well, I like the way you said that you have to be a bit of a generalist, but I would suggest that perhaps my unique ability might be to be able to shift from one to the other very quickly. And I think that's very common out there. But when I say shift, I don't mean necessarily to the level of shifting from in the boardroom to a sales front, or and being able to shift the actual task of the day. I mean, it's being able to scale and shift your job and what's expected of you, what you need to do as the company changes. And that's sometimes harder. And the reason that I feel that that's so important is that as a company grows and changes, if we fail to grow as individuals, we will hit our own glass ceiling. And when a leader hits a glass ceiling, a leader of an organization, not a leader as a term of, there's leaders throughout our organizations, but as a head of an organization, if you fail to see your own glass ceiling, it'll result in significant consequences to the overall operation. So, for example, there are times where the company may need my support on a sales front. There's times where the company may need my support on a financial front, financial reporting analysis, and so on. But as the company changes, I've had to give up a lot of things that perhaps I really enjoyed doing at the time so that I could move on to do the things that the company needed to do and needs to have done. So little trip down memory lane. When we were a small organization of 5 and then up to 20 and up to 40 and 50 and so on, my job changed. It came from, project management, technical solutions provider, customer, liaison, if you will, and customer service focused everything. And then, yeah, and as the organizational shift along the way, eventually you get to a position where we are today, where at one point in time, I would wear the hat of the CFO, I'd wear the hat of the CEO, I'd wear the hat of the general manager, I'd wear the hat of all these different roles, because they're all smaller parts of my larger role. And as the organization grows, I now a large part of our operations are managed by another very capable individual, because I don't have enough capacity and time to be able to continue to do that myself. I guess I use the analogy that as the company's growing, if you fail to stay in front of the company and lead it in the right direction, or if you go too far ahead of the organization, both can end up with a consequence. If you're too far ahead, the company will lose focus, they will lose direction, they won't be able to see where you are going. If you don't stay far enough ahead and be able to shift and grow as the company grows, then you will get overrun by your own company. And I don't mean that every company's out to get their leader. But what I mean is that they expect you to keep moving. And if you're going to fail to do that, somebody else needs to. And therefore, you're hitting your own glass ceiling. So being cognizant of where you are, being able to let go of the things you were doing yesterday, to willingly and excitedly take on the challenges of tomorrow. And not only tomorrow, but being able to see that 5 years ahead is so important. So that's what I really feel that I've been successful doing. It's and that's not easy for a lot of individuals. impact, like the management of change or the acceptance of change in most organizations is what really is hard to do. When people are all of a sudden taken from one role and moved into another role and moved into another role, particularly if they feel that they weren't part of the decision as to why they're going in those capacities, that can be very difficult, right? So if I could encourage everyone, um, in the audience, so to speak, or in your membership to champion something, is like look for the positive in change. Look for how you can not only anticipate change, but tackle change and learn how change can strengthen you as an individual. Because staying the same, there's nothing wrong with it. Sometimes that's comfortable for people, but if you really want to get the extra squeeze out of life, learn how it can impact your life. Learn how change can benefit you and how it can make you a better person and grow. And if you can master that, then it's night and day.
It's such a theme. Like, so I'm into my second season now. And the first season I spent all 12 episodes talking to people that are doing exceptional work. And it could be as an entrepreneur, it could be in a leadership position. It was a variety of different things, a tech startup. There's a variety of different things. But what everybody had in common in season 1 is they're doing exceptional work from my perspective. And what I'm realizing, like in season 2 now, in addition to being very authentic and doing exceptional work. So authenticity was the common thread between everybody that I've talked to, is they're very authentic, doing very unique work in their own space. But what I'm noticing now is, and it's just the nature of the conversations, is this like limitless theme. I'm finding that people that are doing very exceptional work today have this limitless kind of mindset in their approach to problems and change. So a lot of people most people, in fact, I'm going to venture to say, will allow problems and issues to kind of become roadblocks and kind of keep them in a box or keep them in a little part of their world or their profession or whatever it might be. And the folks that are really doing exceptional work are the ones that are limitless. Like they're just not seeing they're seeing maybe the problem and the issue, but they're looking for ways around it or looking for ways to conquer it. They're not allowing it to create roadblocks. And is that just a mindset in your perspective, or is that something that could be coached or taught? That limitless mindset that you're kind of talking about, that hunger for change?
Well, it's mindset. There's lots of books out there, lots of information out there available on mindset and the impact it can have in your life and in your business and in your overall health, even, right? Positive thoughts lead to positive decisions, and positive decisions to positive actions, and positive actions positive outcomes, right? It's a there's no doubt about that in my mind. Can you coach it? Yeah, I think you can. It's a lot of things come to mind that some people by nature are a bit negative. It's the glass always half empty and that kind of stuff. And when you take a personality that always sees possibility and you put them with that person, sometimes there's a little bit of friction. Like, why are you always so happy? Why you always say it's no problem, it can be done. I think that to turn the corner with that approach and to get people to a can-do kind of positive mindset, I think we have to take a patient approach to understand the way others look at the world. We don't have their experiences. We've never walked a day in their shoes. Maybe they have seen this fail 5 times already, and you coming in and saying, let's go ahead and do it, isn't enough. So I think we need to take that into context and help use that to help us become better coaches. But I truly believe if we do our job well, and if we're listening well and we're taking some consideration to other people's experiences and understanding, perhaps we can find why it didn't work before, help fill those voids, and then change the mindset and the outcome. Because once you have a win, it's easy to make another win.
Momentum.
Exactly.
Yeah. 2 questions about that. Devil's advocate. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't you just like get rid of the person with a negative mindset and bring in somebody who's wired positively to make it easier?
Well, the devil's advocate, I've seen many kinds of the devil's advocate. I've seen the devil's advocate that just nothing will ever work. So they relentlessly pull up issues and roadblocks just almost to be a bit of a terrorist in the meeting, so to speak, right? But then I've also seen the devil's advocate that actually brings up really some constructive points and and can actually add some value to say, oh, I've never thought of that, and allow for meaningful discussion. So let's presume that we're talking about the meaningful input and the perhaps constructive criticism, if you will, or a positive disruptor in the meeting.
I always think of those people as the folks that identify the risks that no one saw coming.
That's right. They may have a unique ability to just calmly look at things from a different perspective and see things that, or maybe they've experienced them in the past that they just raise flags. You need those people. You really do. The worst thing we can get in any kind of capacity, doesn't matter if you're brand new in a company or if you're the top of the company, is tunnel vision. If you get tunnel visioned, also known as my way or the highway,
Yes.
you will lose everything. You'll not only lose your circle of influencers and friends around you and colleagues, you'll lose your followers, you'll lose those above you or all around you. And that's hard. It's really hard to replace that and to rebuild that. So but what really prevents us from keeping our eyes wide open and having a broad perspective and being able to listen, and what really drives us to tunnel vision, in a lot of cases, pride. I don't want to be wrong. I'm in too high a position to be wrong.
Yeah. I can't admit my failures or mistakes.
What's
so I
wrong?
just keep going.
What's wrong with being wrong?
Yeah.
Like, what's wrong with it? There's a ton wrong with not admitting you're wrong. And when you have what you perceive or what we've just been speaking of, if somebody perceives you to have tunnel vision in your mindset, you've never been wrong, right? But what's wrong with being wrong? I was just in a board meeting yesterday, and I admitted to making a mistake. I'm chair of the board and the head of the group. I made a mistake. Simple.
Yeah.
Own it, address it, fix it, and learn from it, and use it as an opportunity to coach others.
And you would have built so much trust in that moment that you admitted your mistake.
Yeah. Everybody else, and everybody in the room already knows you made a mistake. So where pride comes back into this is sometimes our pride is what makes us sick. Like, don't ever think you're too big.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a quick, yeah. And you kind of already answered this, but when you are at the top of the organization, in this case, the chairman of the board, running the group, what's your mirror? How do you calibrate when you're either too far ahead or too far behind? Like, do you have someone in your life that helps you calibrate? You obviously have very high levels of self-awareness, which probably helps you calibrate. But what else other than that helps you calibrate how you're performing?
Well, I use a number of things. I feed you hit the nail on the head there. Self-awareness is a massive, massive part of it. And that is something that not everybody has. In order to be, I fully believe, to be a successful leader, you have to have a very high level of self-awareness. You also have to have an uncanny ability to read a room well and to know when perhaps you're creating an uncomfortable situation. Sometimes that's necessary, but you have to understand what is creating that uncomfortable situation or what is creating that body language in the room. You also have to have a way of maintaining dialogue, ensuring that you don't lose the audience, don't lose your contributors. And you have to be painfully transparent and honest with those that are what you would perceive to be your trusted colleagues or advisors or your feedback. And some of those people are at home. Some of those people are maybe your spouse or your partner. Some of those people might be a family member or maybe even another industry colleague that you're aware of. Having those sounding boards, some small, some large, is so important that you can, back to that kind of leadership comment of being too far away that nobody can follow you. That kind of falls in line here too, is that you don't check in, you don't look in the mirror once in a while and really look in the mirror and take some feedback. You can be so far gone that you won't even recognize yourself. And maybe after years you look back and say, what happened there? Mm-hmm. And that's what happened.
Yeah.
Forgot to check in with your people. check in with those that were being honest with you and take it. And constructive, nobody ever said constructive criticism was ever easy to hear.
Yeah.
But you have to decide if you're going to listen to it. And I don't like focusing on negatives. So there are some people out there that will give you some feedback. They're just there to hurt you. Like they've got they've got an issue. There's some resentment or some whatever.
Well,
but,
like you said, ego.
Yeah.
Right? It's usually ego, right? But you could, like, I feel like most people have a really good calibration to like, that's not about me. That's, yeah.
Well, and you don't want to jump to conclusions. You don't want to say, well, the underpinning event is that person's going through this or dealing with that, or they're not happy about this last decision, so they're lashing out. You got to be careful with that. That can be dangerous. You might be making assumptions that aren't accurate.
Reflect first.
But at the same time, I had a colleague say to me one time, he said, well, you don't appear to be, you're listening to me, but it doesn't appear to be soaking in and creating change as far as what I'm saying. I'm saying this and you're not jumping. And I calmly said, no, it's not that I don't appreciate the feedback. I said, but I need time to digest this. And to be honest with you, I also need time to do some fact checking. I need time to understand, is this just your perspective or is this a broader perspective? Because whether it be a business decision or a personal trait or whatever it may be, the last thing we want to do is just jump to a conclusion as well. We need to be able to look in the mirror and say, is that right? We need to look at the facts. Is this true? And we need to, maybe broaden our research a little bit and say, are you seeing this as well? I've been asked about this. What do you feel?
Right.
And get some broader feedback, because let's face it, if we are dealing with one of those negative personalities, and if we were to jump to everything that individual said, we'd probably self-destruct our own careers.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But it goes like, to your comment, part of touching base is knowing who's on the other side of the relationships as well, whether it's board members, your leadership, other stakeholders, clients, whatever it might be. Like you get to know your people, and that relationship ends up, it's a two-way street, right?
Yeah. And by identifying those around you that want you to succeed versus those around you that don't want you to succeed can really help with that. And because if somebody truly wants you to succeed, they will come to you and say, hey, here's your blind spot. Like, I know you didn't know this, or it appears you didn't know it. I'm just checking in, and they'll do it respectfully. They'll do it discreetly, and they'll do it in a manner that shows love and care and true, sincere, genuine appreciation for who you are and what you're trying to do, versus a pot shot across the table or in a public setting, or
for sure.
Something that's
and
you know what, you'll feel good about it. That'll tighten your relationship with that person too.
Well, yeah, very well said. What drives you?
Oh boy. Yeah. Why do I run to work in the morning and I run home at night? I hope this doesn't come off corny, but just my love of life. I love everything about my life. I love where I am in my life. I love my wife and my family. I love my job. I love my employees. I don't know that I could have it any better. Everything is coming true. So maybe to just give a little context. So I am, this year I will be married 25 years. And that goes by quick when you think that I've been with my wife for 35 years. And, we've been together since high school, and I can see you doing the math there. Yes, I'm 51. But, we waited till we were probably a little long in the tooth, but we started having children in our 30s. So we've got, a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old right now, 2 boys, wonderful, healthy young men that are really proud of. And, wherever we go, they're really disciplined and super kind and helpful. And we get a lot of great compliments on these 2 young fellas. So I'm really glad and to see them maturing and growing up, and it's a lot of fun. On the work front, had the opportunity to work with close friends, had the opportunity to work with really close customers and build long-lasting relationships and friendships with those customers. I kind of commented earlier that in the electrical services world, it can be demanding. When typically when a technical service provider gets a call, it's when they've exhausted all other avenues of solving the problem. So they call you in, and it always seems to be at a short notice sometimes, and maybe the middle of the night, and so on. But if there's regardless of the outcome of what you're able to do for that customer, more often than not, but majority of the time you can solve the problems and it's wildly successful. But there's times where you just go in, you give it your best shot, and you just can't solve it, right? And so you need to pull in other resources. But no matter what happens, our customers are so appreciative. There's always been that pat on the back saying, thanks for coming. I appreciate you had to drop everything and jump to help us out. And that takes a job from being a job to just, honestly, you feel like you're a superhero, right? It's a highly addictive
Yeah.
job
Hmm.
when you're getting so much appreciation for everything you do on all fronts.
Yeah.
And so, having the opportunity to kind of grow up in the industry with that level of respect and that level of relationships. I don't look at customers as customers. I always look at them as friends, and I always treat them as friends. I treat them as if I was in their shoes, what do they need? What do I need? And there's been times where that comes at the sacrifice of the family. Like you pack up in the middle of something and you're gone. And I've been really blessed as well as many of our employees are really blessed with strong partners on the home front that can just pick up and carry on, right? Um, but I think they do so knowing that their partner that's working in the business is enjoying and loving what they do. If you really love, there's an old saying, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life, and that is so true. It is so true.
Yeah.
And so, what drives me? The love of the job, the love of the customer, the love of my family, clearly. And when people say they don't like their job, like when you talk to friends or people you meet, and I don't like my job. I'm like, holy shit, grab a napkin or a piece of paper. I will write your resignation today. We got to make a change. You either have to move, shift, change, do something. Don't waste another minute.
No.
Make a change. Do something.
Yeah.
You know what? I do every week. I host a leadership discussion in our work with our senior management team, and then often over the years, I've hosted various meetings, quarterly town halls, different things. And one of the tones that I've repeated a few times over the years is suffering in silence. Don't ever suffer in silence. If you're not happy with what you're doing, if something's not going well on the home front, make a friend at work, make a colleague. And more importantly, if you are that person beside the other person, be aware. Pay attention. If you notice, I'll use the name fictitiously, Bob. If you notice Bob is just something's off day, take 5 seconds, pour him a cup of coffee, say, hey man, what's going on? Be that friend and unbutton it, right?
Right.
And so that mental health and that psychological safety and everything that's built around that can be so powerful, not just to get that person through the day, but it can also bolting it fully back to the career choice or the person that's unhappy at work. You may unveil why they're not happy at work. Maybe somebody's in their parking spot every day at work. Like it could be simple, but it can be so complex.
Right. Yeah.
And honestly, there's an opportunity there to have a conversation to make it better.
Right.
I don't know that everybody lands in their dream job right out of high school or right out of post-secondary. Sometimes you have to try a few different things. But if you're not happy, don't suffer in silence. Don't sit there and think that nobody cares that you're unhappy at your job. Everybody around you cares.
Yeah. I'm making some assumptions here, but I'm going to assume 2007, 2008, leading to the start of Team Power Solutions, you're doing a scan of your life and you're seeing like, oh, amazing partner, amazing kids, loving this part of life, but like some parts of this, love some parts of this work thing, but it's not fully aligning and working. And you probably identified it wasn't going to work and it wasn't going to be something you're going to love long term. And you made some changes. And that allowed you to get to where you are today. So that's what I always think about when someone's like, I don't like what I'm doing. I don't like whatever it might be. Like, make the change so you can get to the place where you love what you do, because that's where your best work will happen.
You're spot on, and some of the things that you're right. There was so many things going really well at that point in time in my life. Um, I was in a similar line of work, electrical services in the heavy industry, and based out of Saskatchewan here. The I had a love for the customer, love for the type of work we did. It was really some of the background and the inner workings of the company at the time that really was the problem. So we had to make a decision to change, and it was. I remember confiding in a colleague of mine who's a business owner, and I was sharing a little bit with him about my frustration, and he kind of said something at the time that didn't really make sense, but it sure made sense after. And he said, Tom, when you're sick and tired, you'll know it. And I was like, I feel like I'm sick and tired, but I wasn't sick and tired yet. It took a little bit more brewing. And then, and anyway, and then when I finally mentally made that decision, like I'm sick and tired, I had to make a decision. And to credit my wife, I give her so much support and credit for all the positive things that have happened in our life. At the time, so this is, my kids are born in April, both are 2 years apart, right? And so if you go to where we were in that fall of 2008 mentally, we were on mat leave with our first child at home.
Oh boy.
And really at that point in time, I mean, we were very fortunate to have maternity benefits and things like that, right? But that's not a time to be quitting your job, right? And not only that, but being a prior owner in that prior company, leaving that organization only to start a new organization that's doing the exact same work in the exact same industry presents untold risk,
Yes.
from litigation and everything else. But, to again, back to Melissa, my loving wife there, you got to do this. Like you're not happy with where you're at. You got to make this decision. And really at the time when I made that decision to leave that organization, I didn't have the plan in mind to start Team Power. That was very much an afterthought. That was, I was already independent, working on my own, doing some consulting work and things. And it was only after others, when I left that organization and other people, I started asking a lot of questions as to why did Tom leave? And then the covers started being pulled back on some of the issues internally at that organization. And that resulted in more people leaving, which then led to literally us meeting across the street to have a conversation to say, well, did you leave us or did you leave them? And I said, I hired all you guys. I left them, kind of thing. And away we went and started exploring the vision of, if we're going to do this again, and we're going to do something different. But those were kind of the dynamics of making that difficult conversation and, what led to that. And I could still tell you how it felt emotionally and even down to, I could tell you exactly where I was sitting and making that decision that day in my kitchen at the island, right?
Yeah, that had an impact.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you for sharing. I think anybody that's in that situation where they're doing that scan of their life and they're checking some boxes about things that are going really well and they love, and they see some gaps, it might give them a little bit of a bump to push them over to change it.
Oh, hope so.
Can we switch to Rayhawk?
Yeah, you bet. Yeah.
Okay, so I heard some exciting news a couple weeks ago about Rayhawk Technologies. You guys have raised some money.
Yeah, we have. Yeah.
Yeah. So talk to me about this organization. Where are you guys focused today on that offering?
Well, so Rayhawk Technologies is an autonomous solution that uses some AI, some machine learning, some vision recognition, kind of all the latest buzzwords that if you will, in the world of digital age, right? And what we do is for a conventional granular style, hopper style designed rail car that you'd see conventional for the potash industry or in common in the grain industry, the agriculture industry. You know what? We focus on the top side of the rail car by opening the latches and opening the lids and scanning the interior of the car. Now, traditionally, that has always been done by a person. They need to be on top of the car. Sometimes the cars are moving, walking down the car, bending over, working in extreme conditions, whether it be hot or cold, but with a fall arrest landline on that in case they fall and so on. But the goalposts are moving from a risk perspective because we're loading faster. The cars are now moving versus stationary. We're loading, 24/7 in some industries, round the clock, year round, working in inclement weather, and we're faced with advanced challenges. Some of which are just a reduction in human capital, especially get into rural settings where there's just not as many people that are aptly built, but also interested in doing that type of task, right? So what we're finding is that sometimes they're having to shut down different parts of the plant or processing in order to relieve human capital to come over and do that task, which is arguably probably one of the most dangerous tasks on the job site.
For sure.
So we've developed a technology to basically remove the worker from the top of the rail car. And it's gaining all kinds of traction. In February of 2024, we were down at the Grain and Elevator and Producers Society show called Jeeps Exchange in Kansas City. And that's when we did our initial unveiling of a trade show booth and a speech and so on. And at the outcome of that, we were voted as the best new tech for 2024 at that show, which is the largest of its kind in Western or in North America each year. And we were able to, prior to that, we were able to secure a contract with Nutrien and Lanigan as an early adopter of technology, a company in an industry that's interested in becoming a front runner in technology adoption and really focused on a mine of the future, a mill of the future. So it was great to get them on board. We had turned over that installation, that product, just prior to that show in Kansas in February of 2024. We had completed the training and basically turned the product over, so they were in utilization of the technology. And since that show, we've now sold and installed an installation at the G3 grain terminal called Saskatoon West, just west of Saskatoon. And so now we have one in the mining and one in the grain or agriculture industry. Where that's led us to as a company is that we're just, if you know your investment talk, we're just coming out of that seed investment type of category and going into that Series A type of investment, and we're forecasting based on the conversations that we're having with potential clients and clients that we're working with on engineering, that the uptake is going to be significant. We're in this situation right now where a lot of folks are looking around and looking over the fence saying, well, okay, are you going to try the technology first and then I'll come see it? And if I really like it, then we'll do it.
Right.
But we were even finding that some of these clients aren't even waiting for that. They're like, you know what? I'm going to take the chance. And the reason that they're doing so is that the safety risks are so significant. There are injuries in the industry. There have been fatalities over the years in the industry doing this task. It's a necessary task, but it's anybody that knows anything about loading grain rail cars, they see it. And when they know now that there's a technology that can solve this problem, it's just a no-brainer.
Right.
So we went to the market to secure some investing because we're expecting significant uptake, and we did not want to get into a situation where maybe cash constraints and things like that were going to limit our path to commercialization. We want to ramp this company as fast as the market wants it, and the reason being is that this is a safety system. It's a fully autonomous safety system, and if the customers are anxious to improve their safety on site, we need to be ready to support that. It's as simple as that.
Amazing.
You'd hate to be working for that company that said, well, we just can't afford to do it.
We'll just keep doing it.
So we'll just make you put your life at risk every day.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I remember Johnson, I was out there, Lafarge has done some work out there, and they were talking about essentially their loading facility where they're loading their cars would be completely without people in that facility at all. It would be all done through machinery and equipment.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, trains are, by just simple science and physics, trains are big, bulky, heavy machinery that does not start and stop easily.
No.
So when something goes wrong, it's not as simple as putting your hand up and everything pauses. The machine, it'll keep rolling, right? So
yeah,
there's inherent risk with that.
Oh, absolutely. So I'm sure throughout, since 2009 till now, there's been many problems identified throughout your customer base. There's been many different innovations and ideas that have come to you, including this one that we're talking about with Rayhawk. How do you determine feasibility and what problems you're going to pursue a technological solution, and how do you decide what is not worth pursuing through R&D?
Well, some of the best ideas out there are the simplest ideas. And, when I look back at some of the innovations that we've particularly created in with our manufactured product, because it's just really easy to really see that and it's tangible. I was walking some customers through our plant the other day, and I was speaking to some of these innovations, and I was like, this is done because of this is done because of that. And it wasn't that these were largely expensive things. They were just different ways of doing things that actually enhanced safety and reliability of the equipment. And so for situations like that, the business case is a very, very simple process. Does this make sense? What's the cost implementation? Does it actually solve the problem? And it can be whiteboarded out very quickly. But there are other ones. And I'll come back to, maybe I'll lean towards Rayhawk, where, you can have a great idea, but there's lots of great ideas out in the world. It doesn't mean they all have a customer or or like a need. So I spent months during COVID before we gave the green light to building the Rayhawk business. I gave months to research it and calling customers, saying, if we were to create this, would this be useful? Would you want this? Tell me about your challenges. And some customers were, I'll be honest, maybe a little standoffish. I think they really thought or felt it was maybe a bit threatening because they respond, well, we have people that do that now. But then there were others that we spoke with saying, yes, I would love nothing more than to get people off the top of rail cars. It's just dangerous. We just had an injury or something just happened. And, excuse me. And for those customers that were ready to adopt the technology, they were very forthcoming with a lot of information as far as justification and helping us understand how their businesses ran. Because if you want to create a business case for an invention to move forward, you have to understand why the customer would buy. I mean, we've all had great ideas in our lives, and I like to think that a lot of people have great ideas every day. But the difference between those that actually go forward and become a business and those, or maybe there's different analysis, those that don't move off the plate, those that move and fail, and those that move and are successful, is often the understanding of, is there a business case here?
Do they add value?
Yeah. So little transparency here. Used to host a meeting internally called Blue Sky, and we'd host that every Friday. And the intention was multi-pronged here. The Blue Sky, meeting was about taking somebody from each group and allowing them to go for lunch together and to just talk about, if you could have anything, what would it be at work? It could be a picnic table in the front yard. It could be an improved process. It could be different color office walls. It could be a lot of different things. And there was a lot of great ideas that came out of that. And during our growth and transition, admittedly, we've lost a little bit of traction with that. We haven't hosted one in quite some time, and I'd love nothing more to get it back on track. But when we look at some of the things that we accomplished through that, we had, I created a business case template that you would have the Blue Sky meeting, all the ideas would come forward, would be then coupled with another table called the innovation group, and we would evaluate these. And if they made it through the first couple of benchmarks, then you had to go into basically populating a bit of a business case and then driving it out. So it served a number of purposes. One, it was a vetting tool to really kind of separate the good ideas from the best ideas, or the ones that would actually have a business case. Secondly, it was a little bit of a business education, because you and I could be sitting here and talking and come up with, well, wouldn't it be nice to have this? But if we put a business case to it, will there be any return on investment?
Right.
Some things, a picnic table in the front lawn for people to have lunch at, doesn't have a tangible return on investment.
Right.
But it sure helps with morale, and it sure makes people happy. And is it a big price item, a ticket item? So did that go through a business case? No, it didn't. It was just, build a table. Right?
Different type of return on investment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But opportunities like that and systems like that is what we deploy. That if we want to make sound business decisions, we have to think like business people, and at the same time, we also have to think like people managers and people leaders.
Right.
And therefore, there's going to be things that we do for the right reasons. And I say for culture, for morale, to set ourselves apart as part of our value differentiation between ourselves and a competing company, perhaps.
Right.
And there's going to be other things we do to propel us forward on innovation that has a return on investment, satisfies a customer need, and feeds our value differentiation on that side.
Right.
So kind of two different avenues to it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So really it's that the test for viability really is, does it add value? Is there a commercial application for that solution? A variety of different buckets that you're testing it through.
Yeah. Is there value? That's the best way to put it. The commercial point does lead you back to is there a return on investment that's tangible?
Yes.
Whereas there may not be, but
Right.
is there value?
Yeah.
And it's funny, I think over the years as we've had these conversations internally, there's times where people they actually come to their own realization and say, actually, that doesn't have value. That's just something I thought would be cool.
A part of that business training, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Thinking about it that way. So I'm sure you have a vision for Rayhawk Technologies. You may or may not be able to share it, but where do you see this organization and this technology in the next 5 years or so?
Well, nothing but growth. From what we have forecasted in our pipeline in our growth curve, um, our ultimate vision. The company colors are orange, and the reason that they're orange is it's a high visibility safety color that sets ourselves apart from a yellow of a crane, perhaps, or an overhead crane. It's traditionally yellow sets ourselves apart and is highly visible. And ultimately, our vision would be that wherever you drive, because a lot of times rail lines follow highways, wherever you drive, you will see Rayhawk technology opening, closing rail cars to remove people off the top of rail cars. Simple as that.
Yeah.
We want to see a safer work environment for everyone and to eliminate that hazard entirely while supporting obviously the bottom line of the customers. We're not developing a technology that's going to cost them more to produce or cost them more to ship. We're looking to reduce risk, put people in safer and better working environments where we can utilize their people skills, if you will, their intelligence to do more meaningful tasks and automate the simplicity of railcar opening.
Yeah. No, fantastic.
Yep.
So we've talked a little bit about succession planning more in the lens of your ownership structure for Team Power Solutions. Is that a similar? Do you have partners for Rayhawk as well?
We do, but it's a different structure. That Team Power Solutions is established as a partner, as a true partnership with limited partners, and whereas Rayhawk is a corporation with shareholders.
Okay.
But it is again, it's a broad bench of ownership, and our Rayhawk business unit, like some of our other investments, as being a part of the Team Power Solutions culture, as we discover and develop things and make a decision to spin them out and create a new entity of its own, it gives you an opportunity to invest in that business as a primary investor. And that's just part of that growth ecosystem that we've created at Team Power,
Right.
where the day may come where you decide that you want to step away from Team Power or retire. You then have to leave Team Power entirely, but you may have some of these other investments that are kind of more arm's length that you can continue to be involved in.
Okay. Okay. So succession planning in reference to the two organizations that you lead. What about succession planning for you? When it's your time and you want to take a step back, and I'm not saying that time's anytime soon, but how do you view succession at the top and all of the space that you hold for all of these different things, which is the vision, all of it? Like how do, and we talked a little bit about even reference to corporations, right? Like how do you replace a senior leader such as yourself that holds space for basically in organizations to run?
That's a great question. And again, in full transparency, I feel like I've done a great job building the executive team, the senior leadership team, and so on throughout the organization that has ensured that there is succession planning in place for every role except for myself.
Yeah. Which is
Which
common. Like
is
that is a
common,
very
yeah.
common story.
In some weird ways, I do have some long term, I'll say, candidates in mind that with the right coaching and the right experience and time could be there. My hope is that they'd be ready by the time I'm 80. But I'm just kidding. I joke all the time that I'm going to work till I'm 80, but that's a kind of an outcome of enjoying what you do. But in reality, I think that if and when the day comes that it's my time to go, I will have a certain amount of say in a recommendation. But at the same time, I think it's very important that the company and those in it have an opportunity to choose their leader as well. I think sometimes corporations of large and small sometimes parachute in what they feel is the best leader. I'm not sure that that's always as successful as it could be.
For sure.
Sometimes they do so to get a different culture. Sometimes they need a significant shift. Sometimes there's something they're trying to achieve. They bring in what I would consider a power CEO to force that change. But I'm not 100% sold that it's kind of there's a manual that you would follow to do such a thing.
No, it's an external view. You're bringing someone in externally who isn't familiar with the organization. But I think one reason that a lot of companies do that is a leader such as yourself is holding so much space for the leadership of your organizations. There isn't room for anybody else as long as you're there. So sometimes like just that gap, that hole is so large, you almost you look externally first.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's so true. I'm as being self-aware, I am a financially conservative people leader. I believe in growth. I believe I'm a visionary, and I believe in um, I always have a 10-year, 20-year plan. That is not the case that I've seen in many situations where leadership will come in and say, I am a financial bottom line focused leader.
Short-term results.
And you nailed it. There's a big difference of what you're trying. Are you trying to achieve 5-year goals, 10-year goals, or 1-year goals? We have been through a number of what we would say economic crises in our local industry. Whether it be COVID or whether it be, for us, it was the tough years were 2014, 2017, 18, and then into 2021 after COVID. Those were really tough years. And, a lot of people in our industry did not make it through those times.
Mm-hmm.
We've always been very conservative with our growth. I've been I've been joking to be called a farmer, where we just keep reinvesting. But we have outpaced and outgrown and outreached any one of our competitors to date. In fact, if I go back in time, when we started our company in 2009, we were a fraction the size of some of our competitors, and now we're 2-3 times the size of those competitors. And it's because of the way we've managed the business and the way we've ran the business.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've jokingly said to some of our owners and so on over the years, I said, if we ever get to a point where we're making good money, where we can afford the little extra things in life that kind of people would perceive as being successful, like a sports car or something, I said, if I ever see a hot sports car in front of this building, I will flatten your tires and I'll burn it to the ground right in front of this building. I said, culture to us is everything, and being a team means that you act as a team, right? You perform as a team, you play as a team, you grow as a team.
Yep.
And that's I can't take credit for that. That is a culture that is stitched within our organization, where everybody is growing, everybody has opportunity. We invest in our people, we train our people. We have and this may sound silly, but we even go through the investment and the time and energy to do a thorough appraisal process and so on. And I know that maybe sounds fairly standard in for large scale organizations, but for small scale organizations, it's not.
You're talking like a people appraisal.
Having a people plan and having a professional development pathway for your staff.
Amazing.
All these things are so important. They're expensive. They are.
They absolutely are. Yeah.
Yeah.
But disengaged people is more expensive. And as you
sure
feel like, outpacing the growth of your competitors is because you're people focused. I firmly believe that. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So no direct succession plan for Tom yet. Fair to say.
No, not yet.
Yeah.
I joke with people. I say someday they'll shoot me out of the clown cannon on top of the building. We don't have one on top of the building, but figuratively speaking,
yeah.
And my job is to, in so many ways, to continue to grow and develop, to be the best leader I can every day, to stay ahead of the organization.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to be so far ahead that they can't see me, but to lead the organization. And I'm a realist. There'll come a day where I will not be able to keep up that pace, that the company will need more than I can physically, emotionally, and mentally give.
Right.
So that's why I say after 80, I don't know. There's a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, we'll deal with it then. Yeah, fair enough. Shifting focus a little bit to family, one of my favorite topics. Your role as a leader at home, I'm thinking more as a father to your 2 boys, right? What do you view as the role of a father?
Well, As comparison in relationship to the work side, or just in general?
Either or.
Okay, well,
All of the things.
in
Yeah.
relationship to the one is a bigger topic than the other, so I'll start with the simple. In my role, I believe that one of the most important things I can do as a father with relation to my professional career is um, come home and be home. You'll be present, right? Secondly, be happy with what I'm doing every day. So to set that example, that work is it's an honor to do. That it's something you want to do, right? And three, be able to show that hard work does create the provisions of life. That you will. It may not always be immediate, but at the end of the day, hard work and hard, intelligent work does pay off. That it does move the needle forward. It does provide for your family and so on. So they can understand that. From a family side, the values in life is uh, I I fully believe in a life of servitude. I know a lot of people maybe aren't religious anymore. Maybe some aren't as religious as they think they are, and maybe some are more religious than they think they are. But I'm a big believer, and you got to believe in something. And we can go into a big religious debate, but everybody that has religious background has that, I guess, kind of baked into them a little bit, that to believe in a higher power of some kind. But even if you're not religious, believe in each other. Believe in that you're here on this earth to serve each other, and it doesn't matter who you are. I don't care if you're the president of the United States, which maybe isn't a good example today,
Not today.
or the prime minister of Canada, or the head of your household, or a leader in your community. If you have a leadership mindset that you're there to serve each other, then you will be rewarded every day.
That's why the podcast is called Our Work, because I feel like the work that you do is also in service to everybody around you because of that ripple effect.
However, there's one caveat there. Living a life of servitude, you can get in over your head serving others and forget to, in a certain capacity, forget to serve yourself, maybe.
Right.
And perhaps second to that, or maybe even ahead of that, would be forget to serve your own family. That complacency and that taking your family for granted gets settled in. So that's from a daily work perspective. I always want to be cognizant that I need to be family first. I need to ensure that I'm meeting their needs. Unfortunately, in self admission, I usually put myself last, and that can catch up to your health, your fitness, your rest, your just your readiness for life, right? Can start to suffer a little bit, and I think but that's one of those things that it's ongoing awareness and working towards, and will help rectify that. So, um, the example I want to be to my children is I tried to teach them a balance of skills. Whether my wife may argue, I don't feel like I'm a very good cook. I think she would maybe say I am, but I don't see that as one of my core strengths. But I have a lot of other strengths, and perhaps around mechanical and some of the other things that I've learned, as growing up on a farm. So I always try to educate my children in the ways of working with your hands and doing everything from home improvement to mechanical work to what have you, and that we can do anything. We've got a intentionally amassed a significant amount of tools just to be able to have the tools to do the work and so on. So there's always a project on the go at the house, and my wife, we're a very strong complement to each other, Melissa and I, because she's very capable on many of the mechanical and agriculture and landscape and everything on that front as well. So we're a real good mix that way. But she also is tremendous in teaching some of the finer things of life around the household and around some of her core strengths in cooking and so on. And our kids are amazing cooks. They're amazing bakers. They have no problem tearing into things that are mechanical and maintaining vehicles and so on, and all the while understanding and appreciating their role and how they serve others and be polite and be respectful and be helpful. And again, I come back to something I said earlier. Everywhere we take them, they're holding doors open for people, which is something so small, but they're saying their p's and q's, so to speak. We just get so many compliments back from them. So
Yeah.
um, that's You know, when I look at the grand achievements of life, you really look at your children and at your personal
Yeah,
relationships, and then often your careers are right close because we do dedicate a lot of time in our careers. So
for sure. Yeah.
so far, sometimes I wonder if everything's going so well that I'm not paying attention.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Lastly, partnership. I find the best partners in life, I'm talking spouses now, are the ones that uplift, like level you up, uplift you in a way, like challenge you in a way that makes you a much better person. How does your wife do that for you?
Well, I can echo that to a certain extent. I think that a great partner is going to call you on your bullshit. It's as simple as that. We can get it. I say that it is your bullshit, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I own that. You can get something in your head that locks you, and you're getting tunnel vision, and it's really hard. It's really hard to look outside the box. It's, you know, at times, and we all have those moments. Maybe it's something at work. Maybe it's something you're dealing with on financially. Maybe it's something in your house. I don't know, but you know, Melissa has a really unique ability to just hear me out, listen to what I have to say, and then to say, I heard what you've said, this, and although I have not maybe been involved in that personally, have you considered this? And I tell you, I'm sure this is in many households, but those times when maybe you've had lots on your plate that day, you're just having a little bit of a vent session with one that you love and trust, and then they throw a curveball at you. That kind of brings you back to the heat of the moment, so to speak, you know, with relation to another group or another party. It's hard because your home is your safety world, right? But you really have to unpack that and say, this person is here to help me, not harm me. And, you know, and it can be hard to hear. It's not being a devil's advocate. It's just being a completely outside perspective that has listened to you for the last decades, that knows you better than you probably know yourself.
Yep.
And just saying, have you looked at that? And you're like, oh, I wish you wouldn't have said that.
Yeah.
That's one part I was trying to hide, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know how to maybe describe that. I would say compliments me would be maybe the best way
Yeah.
to, or completes me, just to say, hey, slow down there, Charlie. Have you thought of this?
Yeah. Blind spot identifier. Yeah.
Basically,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic, Tom.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you for having me. I hope I didn't botch it up.
No, that's perfect. Thank you for being so open and yeah, sharing all the lessons and stuff. Like the reason I have these conversations is I learn from hearing people's experience in business and leadership and and family life as well. And there's just so much gold in what you shared today. So I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure being here, and your great questions and very comfortable and easy conversation.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you.